If you're in a relationship with a narcissist or you suspect you're in a relationship with a narcissist, have you ever felt like, what if they're not? Or this need to really, really know beyond a reasonable doubt that they truly are. Like you have to know, you have to have that diagnosis. And you feel like almost like you're stuck either from moving forward or kind of reaching any kind of decision making until you can get the answer to that question. Like, what if they're not a narcissist? If that's your case, you're going to want to watch this video because we're going to talk about two things that are going on. And if we don't understand this, it's almost like our brain with this question pulls up the e-brake in our mind. The emergency brake is pulled up and we can't move forward. We can't seem to make decisions. We can't seem to think of anything else except this question of, are they or are they not a narcissist? And it can really consume a lot of our time, a lot of our life, and it can keep you stuck in a situation that is ultimately draining you of your personality, of everything. So that being said, let's dive in. For those that don't know me, my name is Michelle. I'm a trauma-informed recovery coach. I specialize in narcissistic abuse recovery and complex PTSD recovery. I also train survivors to become coaches like myself. So if you're interested in any of that, I'll leave the link there for you. And make sure you watch to the end because we're not just going to talk about why this happens to us. I want to give you guys solutions. I always save the best for last. So remember to watch to the end. When it comes to needing to know if they are a narcissist, to me, there are two things going on, at least two things. Now, there could be more things going on, but for the sake of this video, we're just going to talk about two. One of them is extreme cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is that discomfort we feel when the brain gets stuck in two opposing thoughts. So one side of your mind might say, his words say he loves me. He says he wants the relationship to work. He says everything's fine. Or she, by the way. Narcissistic abuse does not distinguish between sexes. Okay. So she thinks everything's fine. I'm the problem for being too sensitive. So everything is fine. The words and the actions are that they're doing everything to create chaos. And the brain gets stuck trying to kind of put these two pieces together. Another reason why our brain can get stuck in cognitive dissonance when we're trying to figure out if they're a narcissist or not is because when you start learning about especially covert narcissism and covert malignant narcissists, and you realize that a lot of it is strategic, a lot of it is done on purpose, it is intentional for the brain to wrap around this person in my life who is in a role that I expect to love me, like a parent, a sibling, a good friend, a significant other, is intentionally wanting to harm me. The brain again gets stuck in that cognitive dissonance. It's almost like trying to move a car with one foot slammed down on the brake and one foot slammed down on the gas. That cognitive dissonance causes a lot going on inside, and yet you're not getting anywhere at the same time. And so that cognitive dissonance causes so much confusion, causes this fog, this mental fog to be in our mind, and we don't see the clarity as to what is going on with this relationship and if this person is toxic, and if so, if they're on that scale of NPD. So that's one of the reasons why it can be hard to kind of really evaluate this question if we're stuck in cognitive dissonance. And the other thing that makes this question hard is that there's this thought, at least I know with myself. And if you have been there, if this resonates with you, let me know in the comment section below. But I know with myself, it was almost like when I learned there was a name for it, my brain went to, oh, if it's a thing, then we can fix it. We can get help for it. And so the other thing that makes it hard for us to kind of let go of whether or not they are a narcissist or not and focus on more important things is the fact that there's this thought that if they're not a narcissist, if they're really not on that really high on that scale, that means there's hope. And so there's this piece of us that isn't ready to let go of the relationship. It's hoping that we can be proven wrong so that we can stay and continue to be in this relationship. So those are a couple of common reasons why I see that question, why people get stuck on it, why it's so hard to let go of and focus on other things. That being said, let's shift into what to do. If you're in this situation and you just can't, this question keeps coming up over and over in your mind, and you can't seem to resolve it in your mind so that you can focus on other things, what can you do? So, one tip that can help is to start working through and resolving your cognitive dissonance. Now, when it comes to cognitive dissonance and that discomfort that comes in the mind, our mind wants to do anything to resolve or lessen the discomfort. And so sometimes what it does is it justifies or minimizes. So, for example, if you're like, he or she says, they love me, but they treat me like this. The mind, to resolve it without your conscious consent, will say, oh, well, that was just that one time, or it's not happening as much, or, maybe that was just a bad day and I'm being too sensitive. Now you're gaslighting yourself, right? But regardless, your mind starts to try to justify it. And so you don't want that to happen because that keeps you stuck. What you want to start doing is starting to help your mind to see clarity. One way to resolve the cognitive dissonance when it comes to narcissistic abuse is remember to always believe what a person does way more than what they say. So if somebody says, I treat you good, I'm kind to you, and they fill the whole day with being extremely unloving and extremely unkind, notice the discrepancy. And then always recognize that just because they are saying that does not mean that that is who they are, but their actions are showing who they are. Okay. We tend, as victims of narcissistic abuse, many of us tend to project how we are into the narcissist. If we say something to the narcissist, it's only because that's how we really feel. And so we expect their words to carry the same weight when in fact they don't. So start noticing their behavior and start validating your feelings. That's one thing that will help with the cognitive dissonance. The other thing is when it comes to hope. Again, this is really hard with narcissistic abuse because with the trauma bond that you wind up getting stuck in, and that can be a whole different topic, but with that trauma bond, one of the ways that they keep you hoping or having a hard time letting go of hope is the fact that they are not always 100% of the time horrible. If they were, it would be too easy to want to just walk away. But they're horrible until you can't take it anymore. And at that moment where you put one foot out the door, they remind you of why you were with them in the first place. And they start being who you would want them to be. And that can carry on for a time period because you don't trust it in the beginning. So you have walls, but as your walls come down, what you will notice is that the second you begin to trust it, the second you're all in the relationship again, it flips and it goes back to that nasty, the abuse, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the triangulation, all over again. That's an abuse cycle, but it keeps you stuck in hope. You live through those horrible moments, craving that moment when they reminded you or showed you who you thought they were. And so we start thinking, well, if they did it that time, maybe they'll do it again. Maybe if I can just get through, maybe if I can keep yanking myself inside out and getting it right, then that person, when they get there, they'll be able to realize that's what I'm looking for. And then they'll stay like that. But it doesn't happen. And so something to help you to break out of that is really start journaling on a regular basis how this person makes you feel. Okay. If that amazingness is there, journal what they did and how it made you feel. And it doesn't have to be in a lot. It could be one sentence. Today, this happened. How was I feeling today? Like this. I know with my clients, when they're working through situations like this, when they start journaling, they'll come back to a session and be like, Michelle, had I not done that, I'm in shock with the amount of things that happen and how horrible I feel. It's almost like my brain wasn't even letting me see it. And so that's another thing that happens with abuse is your brain deletes what's going on. It's like abuse amnesia because your brain's like, oh, that's causing Michelle a lot of pain. Let's delete that so that she can deal with the situation and, not be in so much pain. The problem with that is it keeps you stuck longer. Okay, so that helps with the cognitive dissonance, really being mindful and journaling and noticing what's going on, what they're doing, but also what's going on inside of you. And now, as you're working on that, as you're working on or through your cognitive dissonance, I want to encourage you something way more powerful than discerning if they are a narcissist or not is really starting to focus on you. Because even when you're trying to figure out if they're a narcissist, your whole focus is on them. We only really begin recovering when we bring that focus on ourselves. Now, I can't tell you stop asking yourself that question because usually what we resist persists, right? So I'm not going to tell you to stop asking if they are or are not a narcissist, but I'm going to encourage you to ask the following questions. Number one, do I feel safe around this person? Do I feel emotionally safe to express myself? Number two, do I feel supported and built up, or do I feel constantly teared down? Number three, does this person display empathy for me when I'm going through something difficult? Or are they indifferent? Could I be crying on the floor and they just jump over me as if I'm a nuisance? Number four, have I lost touch with who I really am, my values, and my self-identity? Number five, am I constantly yanking myself inside out trying to please this person? And yet I feel like nothing I do is ever enough. And I'm on this quest, this mission to find the secret formula to make them happy. That was a really long question, but it is an important one to ask yourself. Number six, do I constantly feel blamed for everything that goes wrong? And number seven, am I made to feel as if I'm responsible for their emotional state? Like if they're angry, it's my fault. If they're disappointed, it's my fault. If they're happy, they take all the credit, but everything negative is somehow my fault. Number eight, big if they apologize, does this person actually show change consistent with remorse? Otherwise, I'm sorry, they're just two words that mean nothing. Number nine, if a friend of mine was in this same type of relationship, what advice would I tell him or her? And 10, do you find yourself developing traits that you don't like, that you don't value, that are not even a part of who you truly are? In fact, they're more like who the other person is. And you're developing more of those traits, and the other person is seemingly becoming more and more like you. Those are 10 questions that I want you to start asking yourself. If you still need to ask yourself if they're a narcissist or not, fine. Your mind will get there when it gets there, but you can help it by also asking these questions and helping your mind and really helping yourself to realize that whether they're a narcissist or not, what is this doing to you? How is this affecting you? And that's what you really want to start focusing on.